Hello, welcome to this chess game I played on chess.com. I played against the 13-15. I was also 13-15 at the time. Pretty evenly matched, and he played white, I played black, and he opened with the f3 knight. I responded with the c6 knight. I would have responded with e5, but this knight prevented that. My opening move for black is normally e5. He responds with the f3. Sorry, he responds to the c6 with pawn d4. I need to push up on the d5 pawn because I don't want him to push down, threatening my knight. So he then does the gambit with the c4 pawn. I don't respond to the gambit. I decide to push up with the f6 knight to offer some protection to the pawn. I didn't really want to bring out the queen so early, so I decided to bring out the knight instead. I was interested in developing my pieces as quickly as possible against this guy because I knew he was going to be quite good. Okay, so he pushes with the e3, which I responded with g4 bishop because I wanted to pin the queen. Sorry, I wanted to pin the knight. He responded with the d2 knight, and I pushed up with the e5, taking advantage of this pin. I was taking advantage of the pin because even though he's got superiority over this square with the amount of cover on it, he can't really use this this knight because of the pin on the queen. Sorry, because of the pin on the knight. So I took advantage of the pin by pushing up with the e5 knight. He responds with the take on the d5. I could have responded with f6 to d5, the knight to d5, but I decided to push the queen up at this point. I think I may have been interested in castling opportunities while also bringing out the queen. But I think if I could have done it again, I may have responded with the d5 knight. Because of this pin, he wouldn't have taken the otherwise unprotected knight. He then responds with the bishop, which brings the bishop in play, opens this file, and also offers some protection. It pretty much nullifies the pin on the knight, which is a very good move. I respond by protecting the bishop with the h5 pawn because I would have lost a piece on the exchange if an exchange had gone down here. I would have lost. My thought process was knight to e5, response was queen to e5. He then would have played the bishop to g4 to take my bishop. I could have responded with f4, but then his queen would have taken my knight and he'd be a piece up. So I played h5 out of necessity. He castles, I castle. I was opening up this d line for later on in the game. He wants to push away my bishop, to which I respond with e6. I could have done d7 here and then played c6 later on. We should have opened up this diagonal. I didn't play that. I decided to play with the e6 because I wanted to keep the file. I wanted to keep this line open. Okay, so he's pushing down to b3. I come across to a5. I was interested in putting some pressure on the knight. The knight's actually pinned because of the rook on the queen. He responds with the bishop to b2, and I consider this the move of the game because he's doing three things with this bishop. He's opening up this this line. He's got a full protection on this line now from all pieces. He's defending his rook from potential invasion. If he moves the queen later on, I come up with my queen, perhaps taking b3. But then I used to think this was the best move of the game, but it does offer protection to the rook, but the rook is already covered. Oh no, but it gets covered because of the move. So he gets the rook is covered twice when the bishop moves out. So I consider this the move of the game, because it also puts pressure on my knight, and I actually moved my knight in response to this, the c6, to offer some protection to my king for later on. So knight to c6, and in response to that he moves the queen to c1, taking down the c line, which my king happens to reside on. I still interested in taking out this, potentially taking out this knight. I have superiority over this square, so I'm just putting pressure, mounting some pressure on that piece, and he responds with c4, which puts pressure on my queen. Perhaps also in future he can move the knight to the d6 or to the b6 squares, which, you know, if my knight wasn't here, the queen would be pinning this pawn, which prevents the taking of the knight. So I was a bit concerned about the knight moving there, so I decided to take it, did the exchange. He brings down the bishop. I'm then having to protect the f7 pawn. So I do that, but he's actually got this, my knight's actually pinned really, because if I move the knight, he takes the pawn and pressures the rook. He gets a free piece if I move the knight, so I'm kind of interested in fixing this, which I managed to do at some point. Yeah, it's not really a fix, but I moved down to the e6 to to the e7 to maintain some pawn structure if he decides to bring down on the bishop, which I can't imagine he would, because I would respond with f6, then pressuring his rook. Unless he wanted to move the rook, it wouldn't have been a great move. Okay, so he's then trying to move my queen. I decide to go for f5, even though I'm wary of the mounting attack on the king. I do move my queen to the other side of the board, almost out of necessity, because there's not really much else. I could have gone for a4, but I felt that the queen would be locked down a bit moving there. She's only got these two diagonals in this line. I didn't think that was too great, so I decided to go with to the f5, so the queen remained somewhat relevant to the game. Okay, so I'm not really sure why he made the e2 on the bishop. Maybe he wanted to open up the line, the c line again. Maybe he was interested in offering protection to the knight, but I can't see exactly why. Maybe he was worried that I was going to bring up a mount attack on the king. Maybe have the this pawn pinned and then take the knight. Maybe he was playing defensive when he made the move, but I'm not really sure why he did that. I responded by moving up the g7 pawn. Yeah, the g7 pawn to g5, interested in threatening the knight. He responds with c3 again, not really sure why he did that, because he's then closed off this line again, and he's only offering protection to this pawn, which is already protected by this pawn, and I'm not particularly sure why he did that. But again, it's one of these things I'm never going to know. Okay, so I'm still moving up with the g5 to g4 pawn. He responds by threatening my queen again with a knight. He's also pinned. He's also got a fork on my queen and my knight. So I decided to eliminate the threat, go for the exchange, and now he's in quite a nice position on the bishop. I decided to respond with b6. I wasn't really interested in him taking the a7 without a response. So I move on the b6. He responds with g4. I really wanted to keep this pawn on this line, so perhaps I could get to h3 while also pinning this pawn, so I could then move the pawn up and checkmate, but that never happened. He then puts me in check. I didn't expect this move. It was quite a good move. I was going to go to b8, but then realised it wouldn't have been great, because the queen coming down to c6 would have left me in all sorts of problems. I did have a response. I could have gone with queen to c8, but I'm really leaving fate in his hands if I do that. So I decided to move the king a bit unconventionally. I went for d7. He then pushed with the rook to the d line. Again, I was worried he was going to move his bishop on the next move, maybe take my knight. Would have been a free piece, so I decided to move my bishop to d6, which essentially puts my bishop in a pin, pseudo pin, because it's not really a pin, but it basically is, because if he then moves the bishop, I've got to keep the bishop there. If I move my bishop now, he can then move his bishop, and then he gets a free piece. So it is really a pin, what you're seeing. Okay, so he puts me in check. I decide to play queen to b5. This is actually one of the weaker moves he played. I don't think he realised the repercussions. He didn't fully realise what could have gone on there. So I took the bishop, and he responded with the a4, pawn to a4. I was greedy. I should have really defended my knight at this point, but I saw free pawn, so I went for the free pawn. He then took advantage of the fact that I didn't really pay attention, and then he took the knight. I didn't actually see the d8 threat originally. I was going to move somewhere else, but then I saw it, so I decided to move to e8 on the rook. He then pressured my queen. I moved my queen to e4. I still wanted to maintain some relevance for my queen in like an attacking stance, so I kept my queen up. I could have moved my queen to a more defensive spot, maybe c5 I could have played, but then again he could then move his rook to. He could have moved his bishop to g7, and that would have been horrible. So no, I'm glad I played e4. Okay, so he moved his pawn down. He was thinking about getting the castle down on this line down here, perhaps threatening the c7 pawn. I wasn't too happy about that, so I played queen to b7. I was thinking if he played a6 on the pawn, I could have taken it with my queen, but then I realised after I made the move that the rook was defending, so that wouldn't have worked. He took with the b6. I responded with b6. He couldn't then bring down his rook because of the queen, so I was okay with that. I'm very much in a defensive stance right now. He's very much in an attacking stance. He's got way more space than me. He's in a better position, and he's also threatening my g4 pawn. I focused a bit too much on this pawn. I was thinking maybe f5 or g8 with the rook, but eventually I played b5 because I was worried he was going to try and couple up on this line and then come down to the a7 square. So I decided to play b5 to prevent this from happening. He was fairly determined to take on one of the files, so I decided to. He went for the obvious move afterwards. I played g8, I think, on the rook. I was interested in threatening the g2 square. He played d. He played d1. Queen to d1. He was interested in threatening the king again. I played c5. I wasn't interested in my opponent bringing the rook to d4, so I played with the c5. These pawns actually proved to be fairly useful in this game, instrumental to my survival, I think. He was determined to couple up on one of these lines with his rooks or his queen rook, so he played to a2 with the intention of d2. I had to play a defensive move here. I went for the protection of the bishop, whilst protection of the bishop and protection of the two pawns with the queen. He then played. He saw the check opportunity and he played a7. So I responded with c8, hoping maybe he'd be silly and play a8 with the rook, and then I'd take with my queen. But that didn't happen. He took my my pawn, and at this point I'm not looking too healthy. So I'm not sure why I played d6 to d7. My bishop was in a much better spot here, I think, with the diagonal, but I don't know. I think I could have played b4 instead, but I played e7, to which he responded with g7. I went for the exchange. Now both rooks are off the table, and it's just one rook each. I then played d8 because I understood that even if he took the bishop at this point, his queen would have been gone. So it doesn't really matter that there's no protection on the bishop. Not for this particular move, but it turns out it was a problem. He played a check. I responded with a d7, and now my bishop's dead because there's no protection for it. He takes the bishop, and I place the pressure on the bishop. On his bishop on c3. I wasn't thinking I was going to win at this point because I was in a very bad spot. He was 2 pieces up by now, and I wasn't looking too good. So he's in a much stronger position. He moved the bishop to get out of the potential take, and I think he also moved back here and not here because maybe in the future if I move the pawns up, he'd have to move again. So maybe he wanted to do that just to stay out of the way with the bishop. So I decided to play one of my last attacking moves, which is h7. He responds with g8 to g8 to try and attack whilst also lining up in the bottom rank. I defend, and he plays a check with the queen. I move king, and he checks me on the e6. I play a7 thinking that he wouldn't be able to check me again. He actually did have a checking opportunity with the queen. He could have gone to a2, but I don't think he saw it, so instead he played with a pawn, which cuts off my attack, but it also annoyed me. So I played d7 and threatening the queen. He moved, he saw the a2 at that point, checked me. I played b8, he came down to e8, I played d8, and I think we did an exchange. I was thinking if I took the rook, he'd be able to win my queen by forcing me to move the king out of the way, but I was actually okay here. So I decided to take the rook. He played the pawn, I went to g8, and this was the winning move for me because he didn't see the diagonal on the queen. So he was focused on the bishop, king, the pawns, and he played a weak move. I consider this the weakest move of the game. I'm not quite sure why he did that. The pawn was covered by the bishop, and it lined him up for the check after the queen takes. So I took the queen. He realised he'd played wrong, and from then on the game's pretty much over for him. I've got 2 queens, and eventually he resigned. So yeah, I think if this gets enough hits, I'll probably do another one, and we'll see how it goes. Stick around.